The black void stretched infinitely before me, the silence of space only broken by the occasional hum of my ship's aging engine. I had spent years scavenging the remnants of humanity's failed ventures, derelict ships, abandoned colonies, and shattered satellites, all left adrift in this cosmic graveyard. It was a living of sorts, but not one I'd recommend. My AI companion, EVA, interrupted my thoughts. "Unusual signal detected," she said in her clipped, emotionless voice. "Origin, unknown. Probability of distress, 72%. I sat up straighter in the pilot's chair, intrigued. Distress signals often led to valuable salvage or a gruesome discovery. Either way, they paid well. "Patch it through," I ordered, my fingers tightening on the controls. EVA complied, and the console crackled to life. At first, it was garbled static, but beneath it, I caught faint, distorted words. "Help anyone trapped?" The voice faded, replaced by a rhythmic pulsing that sounded more biological than mechanical. It set my teeth on edge. "Coordinates received," EVA reported. "Warning. The source lies within an uncharted sector." I hesitated. Venturing into uncharted space was risky. Navigation systems were unreliable, and there were rumors of ships disappearing without a trace. But something about the signal tugged at my curiosity. "Set a course," I said, overriding my better judgment. The station loomed ahead hours later, a monolith of shadow and silence against the backdrop of a dying red star. It was enormous, far larger than any I had encountered before. Its jagged, asymmetrical design gave it an alien quality, as if it were built for beings who didn't share our sense of symmetry. "Analysis?" I asked. EVA hesitated, which wasn't like her. "Materials consistent with advanced alloys, unknown origin. No active power sources detected. The station appears abandoned." Despite her words, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. The hull's blackened surface was pockmarked with scars, and faint markings, possibly a language, glowed faintly along the edges. Docking was surprisingly easy, which only deepened my unease. The airlock hissed open, revealing a corridor bathed in dim, flickering light. I hesitated at the threshold, my breath fogging in the cold, recycled air. "Environmental conditions are stable," EVA said, as if sensing my reluctance. I stepped inside, my boots echoing against the metal floor. The interior was a study in contrasts. Parts of it gleamed with advanced technology, seamless panels, floating orbs of light, and walls that seemed to hum faintly. But other sections were decayed and alien, with tendrils of an organic substance creeping across the surfaces like veins. I followed the faint glow of emergency lights deeper into the station. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional drip of condensation. My footsteps seemed too loud, as if the station itself was holding its breath. A faint trail of blood streaked across the floor, leading to a shattered console. I knelt to examine it. The blood was old, darkened to a rusty brown, but it still made my stomach churn. What had happened here? "EVA, can you access the logs?" I asked, gesturing to the console. "Attempting to interface," she replied. A moment later, the screen flickered to life, displaying fragmented data. Most of it was corrupted, but a single phrase repeated over and over. Asterisk, "do not enter. Do not release them." Asterisk. My pulse quickened. Further down the corridor, I found what could only be described as cells. They lined both sides of the hallway, their thick glass walls smeared with some kind of black, viscous substance. Inside, shadows shifted unnaturally, and I couldn't tell if it was a trick of the flickering lights or something alive. One cell's glass was shattered, shards scattered across the floor. Whatever had been inside was gone. My stomach twisted, but I pressed on. At the end of the hallway, a massive door stood slightly ajar. Beyond it, a control room lay in ruins. Monitors flickered with static, and the air smelled faintly of ozone and decay. I stepped inside, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. Something wasn't right. "EVA, scan the room," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Life forms detected," she replied, her tone devoid of inflection. Proximity. 5 meters. My blood ran cold. I spun around, scanning the shadows, but saw nothing. EVA confirm, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Life forms no longer present, she said. Anomaly detected. Recommend immediate evacuation. Panic clawed at my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. Running blindly could be just as dangerous as staying. Instead, I backed toward the door, my hand resting on the hilt of my plasma cutter. The station groaned, a deep, resonant sound that seemed to come from its very core. The lights flickered violently, plunging me into brief moments of total darkness. When they steadied again, the control room's monitors displayed a single word. Asterisk leave. Asterisk. I didn't need to be told twice. Back on my ship, I sealed the airlock and fired up the engines, putting as much distance between myself and the station as possible. But as I stared out the viewport, watching the station shrink into the void, a nagging thought wouldn't leave me. The station wasn't abandoned. Something was still there, and it had let me go. The station had followed me. Not physically, my scanners confirmed it was still orbiting the distant, desolate planet. But its presence lingered in my mind, heavy and suffocating. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw its shadowy halls, its jagged, alien architecture, and the bloodied message scrawled in desperation. Do not release them. The worst part was the silence. No ships responded to the distress signal. An EVA's analysis of the station's origin had yielded nothing. It was as if the place had been erased from history. EVA, run another scan of the ship, I said, pacing the narrow confines of the cockpit. My voice sounded strained. Even to me. Already completed, she replied. No anomalies detected. I sank into the pilot's chair, rubbing my temples. But before I could process my thoughts further, EVA's voice broke through. Signal reacquired. I froze. The station's distress signal? No. Source, on board. Origin point. Cargo hold. My blood turned cold. What kind of signal? EVA hesitated, a rarity for her. Frequency matches that of the station. My pulse thundered in my ears as I descended into the ship's lower levels. The cargo hold was dimly lit, the hum of the ship's engine the only sound. As I stepped inside, the hairs on the back of my neck rose. There, nestled among a stack of salvage parts, was a small device. I didn't remember bringing it aboard, yet there it was, black and smooth, with faint, glowing runes etched into its surface. I reached for it, and the second my fingers brushed its cold exterior, the lights in the cargo hold flickered violently. Warning, EVA said, her voice rising slightly. Power fluctuations detected throughout the ship. The device pulsed under my hand, a deep, rhythmic vibration that resonated in my chest. A low hum filled the air, growing louder and louder until it became a deafening roar. And then it stopped. When I opened my eyes, I was back on the station. The air was thick and humid, heavy with the scent of decay. My surroundings were a twisted amalgamation of the station and my own ship, a grotesque fusion of alien and human engineering. The walls pulsed faintly, like a living organism, and distant whispers filled the air, their words unintelligible but deeply unsettling. What is this? I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. Unknown, EVA replied, her tone unusually subdued. This environment appears to be an extension of the station. Possible psychogenic influence. I didn't fully understand her words, but the dread in her voice was enough. I needed to move. The corridors stretched endlessly in every direction, each one more foreboding than the last. The cells I had seen earlier were still there, their contents even more disturbing. Some held grotesque figures with distorted features, their bodies fused with mechanical parts. Others were empty, their glass walls shattered, but the air around them seemed to shimmer and warp, as if the prisoners had left something behind. One cell in particular caught my attention. Inside was a figure hunched over, its back to me. At first glance, it appeared human, but as I stepped closer, I noticed the unnatural way its limbs bent and the faint, sickly glow emanating from its skin. Life form detected, EVA whispered. Caution advised. The figure turned slowly, and I froze. Its face was a twisted mockery of humanity. Empty eye sockets, a mouth that stretched impossibly wide, and a voice that grated like rusted metal. You shouldn't be here, it rasped. You've already let it out. My breath caught. What do you mean? Let what out? It didn't answer. Instead, it lunged at the glass, its hands clawing at the barrier with a strength that made the entire cell tremble. I stumbled back, heart racing, and the whispers around me grew louder, more insistent. I pressed on, my steps quick and unsteady. Every shadow seemed alive, every sound amplified in the oppressive silence. The deeper I ventured, the more the station seemed to change. The walls became darker, the organic growths thicker and more aggressive. Some of them pulsed as if alive, exuding a faint, bioluminescent glow. At one point, I stumbled upon a chamber filled with screens. They flickered with static, occasionally showing fragmented images. Figures in white uniforms, strange experiments, and a tall, shadowy figure that seemed to oversee everything. EVA, can you access these logs? I asked, keeping my voice low. Attempting to interface, she said. After a moment, the screen stabilized, displaying lines of text in the same cryptic language I had seen before. I'll translate, EVA said, and the words morphed into something I could understand. Asterisk, containment protocols initiated. Subject Omega breached primary barriers. All personnel terminated. Awaiting external intervention. Asterisk, I swallowed hard. Subject Omega. Is that one of the prisoners? Insufficient data, EVA replied. But this entity appears to be the primary cause of the station's abandonment. A chill ran down my spine. The entity wasn't just dangerous, it was intelligent, and it had deliberately breached containment. The whispers grew louder as I left the chamber. No longer distant murmurs, but harsh, accusatory voices. They echoed in my head, each one accusing me of something I didn't understand. Finally, I reached what appeared to be the central control room. It was massive, with a high ceiling and walls lined with dormant consoles. In the center stood a large, circular platform, its surface etched with glowing runes similar to the device I had found on my ship. As I approached, the runes began to pulse in time with my heartbeat. Warning, EVA said, her tone sharp. Energy readings are spiking. Recommend immediate evacuation. But before I could respond, the platform lit up and a figure began to materialize. It was tall and humanoid, but its form was distorted, shifting between solid and shadow. Its presence was overwhelming, suffocating, as if it was drawing the very air from the room. Leave, it said, its voice a guttural growl that reverberated in my bones. You've already done enough. I backed away, my heart pounding. What do you mean? What have I done? The figure didn't answer. Instead, it raised an arm, and the runes on the platform flared brighter. The station groaned around me, its walls quivering as if in pain. EVA, get me out of here, I shouted. The world around me began to blur, the whispers reaching a deafening crescendo. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything went dark. The void of space felt like a distant dream, a memory I couldn't quite grasp. I was back on the station, standing in the center of the central control room, its metallic walls pulsing with an unnatural, rhythmic beat. My heart raced in time with the vibrations beneath my feet. The air felt thick and suffocating, the whispers from the shadows more distinct now, their voices like 1,000 voices murmuring in unison. Where am I? I whispered, my throat dry. The figure had vanished, but the oppressive presence it left behind remained, lingering in the air like smoke. EVA, report, I demanded, but there was no reply. I gritted my teeth, trying to stay calm. I couldn't afford to lose control. Not here, not now. I turned and looked around the room, my eyes desperately searching for something familiar, anything that might give me a sense of grounding. The runes on the platform still pulsed, a constant reminder of the station's strange power. EVA, I tried again. Is the ship still intact? Ship integrity compromised. She finally answered, her voice strained. as if even she was fighting to stay functional. Power levels fluctuating. Minor breaches detected in the outer hull. Immediate return to ship is advised. I didn't need any more convincing. I spun around, heading back toward the door, but before I could reach it, a low, guttural growl reverberated through the station. The walls seemed to bend in response, as if the station itself was alive, reacting to the disturbance. The sound intensified, and I turned to see the shadows in the corner of the room shift. A form emerged from the darkness, a silhouette inhuman and grotesque. Its body was contorted, limbs stretched beyond natural proportions, the flesh rippling with an unnatural fluidity as if it wasn't entirely solid. I could see parts of its form flicker, its shape warping in and out of reality, like it didn't belong here, like it was changing. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't one of the prisoners. It wasn't even human. I stumbled back, my pulse quickening, but the creature advanced, its eyes glowing a sickly yellow that pierced the dimness of the room. Its mouth opened impossibly wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth, dripping with a viscous, black substance. I couldn't move. I was rooted to the spot by sheer terror. "Do not let it touch you," EVA warned, her voice strained. "It is a conduit. It will take you." I didn't need her to explain. I already understood. The thing before me wasn't just a monster. It was a gate, an opening to something worse, something ancient and unfathomable. I had released it. With a sudden, mind-shattering shriek, the creature lunged. Time seemed to slow as I dove to the side, barely avoiding its grasp. The station groaned in agony, its structure bending and cracking as the creature's form began to distort even further. I scrambled to my feet, adrenaline flooding my system, my mind racing for an escape. "Eva, open the door!" The control room's door slid open just as the creature's clawed hand scraped across the floor where I had been moments before. I bolted through the doorway, but the hallway stretched endlessly, as if the station was growing to trap me. The walls seemed to close in, their organic growths swaying toward me like hungry tendrils. I turned a corner and nearly collided with a figure in the hallway. A person, no, a man. His face was pale, gaunt, his eyes hollow with terror. He was dressed in the remnants of a spacesuit, covered in grime and streaked with blood. He looked at me with a frantic, pleading expression. "Help me, please," he gasped, his voice raw. "You have to get out. You have to leave before it's too late." I froze, my mind racing. Who was this? How long had he been trapped here? I can't, I said, shaking my head. "I need to get back to my ship. This place is—" He reached out, his shaking hand grasping at mine, but before I could react, a low rumble echoed through the station, followed by a series of sharp, piercing shrieks. The walls seemed to come alive again, and the shadows in the hallway swarmed toward us. "No," the man whispered, his voice breaking. "It's too late. They've already found you." I didn't have time to process his words. The air around us shifted, becoming dense, like it was made of thick, sticky fog. The man's body convulsed, and then, with an inhuman screech, he dropped to the floor. His body twisted and contorted as if his bones were snapping and rearranging, a grotesque transformation overtaking him. I stumbled back, horror rising in my chest. The man's skin split open, revealing a writhing mass of black tendrils beneath, like something trying to claw its way out. His mouth opened in a silent scream, but all I heard was the screech of metal. The creature that had once been human stood up again, its new form even more grotesque than before. It was a writhing mass of limbs and alien shapes, barely recognizable as human. Its eyes, now black and void of any light, turned toward me. I turned and ran, my breath ragged, my feet pounding against the metal floor. The walls closed in even tighter, the hallway seeming to stretch forever as I sprinted toward the nearest exit. But no matter how fast I ran, I couldn't escape the feeling that something was always just behind me, waiting to reach out and drag me into the dark. I burst through another door and found myself in a vast, open chamber. At the center stood the platform, now bathed in an eerie, crimson light. The runes were glowing brighter, pulsing with a life of their own, as if responding to the chaos around me. And standing atop the platform, towering over me, was the figure I had seen before, the warden. It had taken on a new form, a massive, contorted silhouette that twisted and flickered between solid and incorporeal. Its eyes were black voids, its limbs stretched unnaturally long, and its mouth was a jagged maw that seemed to be filled with endless darkness. "You cannot escape," it said, its voice an eerie, distorted growl. "You have already released us. Now, we will consume everything." I didn't have time to think. I didn't have time to do anything but run. I turned and dashed toward the exit, praying that I could make it back to my ship, praying that there was still a chance to escape. But as the doors slammed shut behind me, I knew that whatever I had unleashed was no longer bound to this station. It was coming for me. The airlock hissed as I sealed the door behind me, the faint glow of the control room's console flickering across my face. My pulse was erratic, each beat vibrating through my entire body, urging me to act before it was too late. The station, the thing was still there somewhere, twisting and changing. But I couldn't stay. Not anymore. I needed to get back to my ship, to get away from the nightmares it had unleashed. "EVA," I rasped, gripping the ship's controls so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Activate emergency thrusters. Get us out of here. Now." There was a moment of static. And then, "Thrusters online," EVA responded. "Warning, energy levels are critically low. The station is interfering with our systems. Full control may not be regained." The voice was cold, detached, but I could hear the warning beneath her words. If I didn't get out of this sector, if I didn't make it past the station's gravitational pull, I would never leave. I had already seen what it was capable of, what it was becoming star. A low rumble vibrated through the hull of the ship, a deep, resonating hum that felt alive, as if the station was reaching out to me. I could almost hear it, calling beckoning me back. I gritted my teeth, shoving that thought aside. I couldn't think like that. I had to focus. The ship lurched forward as I engaged the thrusters, the old engine sputtering to life with a violent jolt. I turned the controls hard to starboard, praying the ship's battered systems would hold long enough to pull us out of orbit. The station loomed behind me, dark and silent, its eerie glow still pulsing faintly in the distance. Then I heard it, a shriek. No, a scream. A voice that ripped through the stillness of space and made my very bones shiver. It wasn't human. It wasn't anything that should exist. My hands froze on the controls. The voice, was getting closer. The ship's sensors began to beep erratically, the readouts flashing with warnings. The creature from the station, that monstrous thing, was reaching beyond its confines, pushing through the very fabric of reality to follow me. "EVA," I breathed, my voice cracking. "Tell me you're tracking this." "Tracking anomaly," she confirmed. "Distance closing. Likely to intersect within 5 minutes." 5 minutes. My mind raced. I had to think, had to act, or I was as good as dead. The station, or whatever was left of it, wasn't just trying to contain me anymore. It wanted to drag me back. Consume, me. I couldn't let it. I wouldn't. I slammed the throttle forward, the ship groaning in protest, but I barely felt the impact. The air felt cold, and the whispers, those voices, they were back again, crawling under my skin. They said I had already lost. "No," I muttered, clenching my jaw. "No, not yet." I could hear the deep rumble of the creature now, vibrating through the hull of the ship, as if it was wrapping its tendrils around the ship itself. The reality seemed to warp, flickering and distorting with every passing second. The stars outside twisted into unnatural shapes, bleeding together into a void that threatened to consume me. "EVA, reroute all remaining power to the engines," I commanded, my hands shaking. "I need everything you've got." "Understood," EVA replied. The ship's engines roared to life once again, its thrusters blinding as they propelled us forward. But it wasn't enough. The station's influence on the ship had taken root deeper than I'd realized, and the creature, whatever it was, was far too close. The voices grew louder, their words now clear and terrifying. You cannot escape. It wasn't a warning anymore. It was a statement. I glanced at the viewport, my heart sinking as the station loomed larger in the distance, its pulsating core drawing me back. I could feel the weight of its influence, pulling at me with a force far stronger than gravity. I tried to pull away, to engage the maneuvering thrusters, but the controls had gone unresponsive. The ship was no longer mine to command. It was as if the creature itself was taking control. A flash of movement. A silhouette. No, a shape that was too large to be real, emerged from the darkness of space. It was the station, no longer confined to its orbit. It had taken physical form, stretching beyond its original boundaries, an unholy mass of shifting shadows and living metal. I couldn't even comprehend it. It defied all reason. It was a thing that had never belonged in this universe. Then I saw it. The warden, the entity that had governed the station, that had warped it into something far worse than I had ever imagined. Its black eyes fixed on mine, and the shrill, guttural voice that followed chilled my soul. Asterisk, you cannot outrun us, asterisk. And then it was upon me. The ship's walls buckled under a crushing force as the creature tore through the very fabric of reality to breach the hull. The air rushed out with a deafening screech, and I was weightless. For a moment, everything went black. When I woke, I wasn't sure where I was. The world around me was still, dark, and silent. My body ached, and a coldness had settled deep in my bones. The faint glow of the ship's control panel flickered weakly beside me. I had no memory of the last few moments. Had I been unconscious for days? Weeks? The warden. The creature. The station. It had all been real. I scrambled to my feet, panic rising in my chest. My hands searched desperately for the emergency controls, but everything was a blur. My mind was fractured, the memories of the station hazy. And then I heard it again. The whisper. Not yet. I turned slowly, every hair on the back of my neck standing on end. The ship was silent, too silent. The hum of the engines absent. Something had followed me. It was here. The station hadn't let me leave. Not truly. And now, it had come with me.